There's nothing that stops you.
An aggressive growth sense out of.
Yeah, so you get to read in the first chat.
That's even better.
And hey, it's Jeff Pulver, and yes, this is the weekly update on vCons for the living in the age of virtualized conversations. And shout out to Charlene, who was here but had a run. Just want to give an update. If you're new to vCons, it's all good. vCon, just for those of you getting started or wondering what is a vCon, and do you have any? Well, chances are you probably do and just don't know it. So vCon is a file format. It's a new industry standard introduced by the IETF, that's the Internet Engineering Task Force, and it's the first time in the history of the internet that there will be a recognized file format that's going to be used for interoperability amongst everybody who has conversations to share. So what is a vCon itself? It's a file format and it contains conversations. It doesn't matter whether or not the conversations were from email, from text, from group chats, from video calls, from telephone calls. It's about the conversation. It keeps track of who the parties are, and there's a framework in place that provides memory about conversations and the ability to validate, verify who the parties were. So in a world where there's a lot of spam and frankly, a great need these days to offer consent and consent with purpose for how customer data is being managed, the framework of vCons and another IETF protocol, SCIT. SCIT is for supply chain integrity, transparency, and trust. And when those two come together, it's the internet equivalent of peanut butter and jelly, or perhaps it's peanut butter and chocolate, depending upon your context. And what you have is a wonderful way to move forward. And we didn't ask for AI to affect the way we do business, but and it's not like no one saw it coming. We all did. But on that magical month of November 2022, when OpenAI launched and announced ChatGPT, what we saw in the modern internet was the fastest acceleration to getting critical mass of many people from around the world to start playing with and embracing conversations in AI, conversations with infinite information, and the whole idea of what an LLM is, which is a large language model. And who knew in 2020, by 2024, you can get a relatively high-paying job if you knew English and you knew how to express yourself as a prompt engineer. But sometimes it's not just asking the questions; it's being able to discern the answers. And at the vCon events, I have hosted the very first, with the help of friends, we hosted the very first vCon conference in the world in April in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and the next vCon event is going to be taking place formally in Dallas on October 21st to the 23rd. If you want to learn more about that, right now, if you go to vonevolution.com, you'll see the landing page currently shows you the full little information about full vCon, followed by information about the full Von Evolution. Full Von Evolution is in Washington, D.C. on September 15th. There, we're going to be focused specifically on the intersection of AI, telecom, and public policy. At the vCon conference, we're going to be looking at the industry, because these days, when you have a business that's impacted by the speed of AI, magic is happening, and there's so much demands and so much opportunity. But how do you stay on top of that? How do you deal with the change that's in front of you? You may not have asked for it, but we're seeing this great influx of the ability to have so much information. And what's critically important to know is that you no longer have to be afraid of hallucinations when it comes to these LLMs if you use a vCon as your standard to capture a conversation. So in the past, a file format for conversations is not new. They've been around since companies ever started offering insights and all sorts of quantitative and qualitative information about a conversation. And lots of companies have had their own proprietary formats for years. The challenge for those companies has been to teach AI how to read the information and how to not hallucinate. But because the way that these large language models were built, you could effectively think that from a content perspective, they read Wikipedia for breakfast, they read the they read the IETF standards for lunch. And so inherently, this is the reason why you can open up ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and just say, show me the Python source code for a web server, and you'll get code that works. It's because the LLMs intuitively understand this. So how does this affect you? Well, if you're in business and you're not a solopreneur, and you have other people speaking to customers on your behalf, handling support calls, dealing with all sorts of operational issues or challenges, you might want to know what's really happening in your business. And for the very first time, as much as we've had since the era of the internet, the concept of one-to-one marketing at scale, now you can get a handle on what happens if your company is speaking to 72 clients a day, 12 clients a day, 5,000 customers a day, let alone 25,000 customers a day. How do you stay on top of that? Well, if you're in an environment where the conversations are recorded, particularly if you're working in a regulated industry where it's normal, it's not like Big Brother's listening. Big Brother is, your company has to file protocol. And if you're dealing with healthcare, with HIPAA, if you're in the United States, if you're dealing with the financial services industry and keeping track of out-of-band messages, or every conversation with a client has to be documented. If you're dealing with emergency care, if you're dealing in hospitals, if you're dealing in certain highly sensitive areas, you need to have ways to document and capture the essence of these calls. If you're in wholesale telecom, you're used to delivering the call detail records, what are referred to as CDRs when asked. Well, the vCon you could think of as the next generation CDR. And by the way, if you are wholesaling telecom and you've been fighting for years this race to zero or almost zero pricing, no more zero pricing for you, because you now have the opportunity to offer smart trunks. So instead of, sure, you could offer a SIP wholesale if you like, but it's the fact that you can now use some software from the vCon ecosystem and turn those SIP trunks into smart trunks. And if you happen to service call centers or run call centers for other people or for yourself, there's now a whole new set of ways and tools that you could leverage these conversations and leverage the metadata associated with it. You see, for many, many years, the information that provides context to those calls has been ignored. And while it might be frightening to you to think that you can now have total recall for every conversation you've ever had, well, you have it. We're in that day today. And whether you want to have the ability to semantically search every email, every phone call conversation, every text exchange, it's now possible. And yes, there are vendors today that if all your business is inside one ecosystem, yeah, you can have semantic search across that. But if you're working in a company like that, there's a good chance that some of those conversations, or certainly people in your company, are not exclusively using that one system to communicate internally or externally. And how do you bridge? How do you find connectivity between one system and the other? The vCon, because it's a standard file format. Also, if you're a software developer or want to be one or know someone who's looking to figure out what to do next, I see a great opportunity for an emerging ecosystem for third-party developers, people that I used to refer to as independent software vendors, to start adding value by reading a vCon file or having access to, let's say, buckets of vCons, and building applications that simply query that data and provide analysis with business knowledge into a certain sector. That stuff is starting to happen today. There are about 36 vendors I'm aware of that are playing in this ecosystem right now, and it's growing geometrically. And some of those vendors are working on core software, creating what's known as a conserver, which is how a vCon is created and how it's managed. There are people that are getting involved on the trust side and dealing with compliance. There are people that are working on the dashboard layer or the application layer, looking at some of those buckets of vCons and creating value. And there's a whole other generation of folks on the cusp right now looking to figure out what can they do with it. And this is not including at all service providers that are embedding vCons in their offerings to offer next generation services, something which never was before practical nor possible. And those are the leaders, the early leaders in this ecosystem. And there's change happening. So there's a great opportunity over the next 2 years to get ahead of this. 2025 is the year I believe the vCon RFC will come out. And once that happens, boom, now it's everywhere. As much as It took a little bit of time for SIP, which was started in 1996, and that was disruptive to people who placed their bets on H323 as the platform for real-time communications. By the way, H323's origins came from internal networks that had complete and total connectivity. H323 was never designed to run on the internet. Congratulations to all those engineers who figured out how to make that work. But SIP started from the ground up. And today, platforms that you use every day, you may not even realize that whether you're communicating using SIP, which is one IETF standard, WebRTC, you're leveraging things, whether it's the web HTTP or for that matter, you may be leveraging, RTP, you may be using SMTP. These are all standards that are part of that bucket of tools that everyone on the internet today uses without even knowing about it. And vCons for some people, yeah, they may be inside that ecosystem. And for most people, they may not care about how it works, but they're going to care about the results. And as much as if you happen to drive a car, I have some friends that love to rebuild cars, and they absolutely do understand the mechanics of how they work. And then there are many people who go into a car and drive. And as long as a car safely gets them from point A to point B, they're not necessarily the people that are going to support the maintenance of that car. They'll go to a specialty shop to do that. And when you're looking at the impact of AI on business communication, we're talking about a disruptive change to the status quo. And I do believe that we're seeing is that while vCon stands for virtualized conversation, during the vCon era, we're going to see it go from virtualized conversation to virtualized communication. When this metadata that we're capturing conversation by conversation will start to accumulate, what's also building is a knowledge base. And that's the opportunity here to get in early. I believe we're probably 12 to 18 months away from this hitting critical mass to the point where a lot of people will know what a vCon is. And there will be substantial economic investment around the world for folks that already placed their AI bets that understand that the multi-trillion-dollar telecom economy is being positively affected with the intersection of AI, and it's greatly accelerating the use of these technologies in business around the world. So if you're interested in getting started, if you're from the telecom space, you're invited to go to pulver.com. That's my website. And I wrote a white paper in January looking at the effects of vCons on the telecom industry in 2025. It's freely available to download. I write every few days. I publish something called the Pulver vCon Report. If you go to thejeffpulver.substack.com, subscribe. The issues are free, although I do appreciate those who are supporting the publications. And if you are vCon curious, if you're wondering what can you do with vCons today, you can certainly drop me a note at jeff@pulver.com. But more importantly, please consider coming to the events to learn and to engage with others who are already there. And you can start to see the benefits of using vCons in your business. There are many. In fact, if you're someone who works on a strategic level and you're just curious, what can a vCon do for me? Well, I wrote a book. It's in draft form. I'm happy to put it out. You can, if you ping me, I'd be happy to give you my draft copy of the vCon application playbook. It was created as a coffee tenor, as a book to be on your desk or on a coffee table in your office when people want to ruminate about what can we do with vCons today. It's not a coding book. It's really a high level application book where it shows you if you have the ability to have memory and trust in a variety of situations, what you can do with it. And that's the vCon application playbook. And if you just send me an email to jeff@pulver.com, I'll set you up with a copy. So I'm Jeff Pulver. You can tune in next week. We'll be continuing the exploration and the impact of vCons in business and the evolution of vCon because of this AI revolution that we're sitting in. Drop me if there's something that's not clear. Feel free to reach out. A shout out to Charlene. I will look forward to co-hosting next week's session with her then. Thanks a lot and tune in soon. I'm Jeff Pulver. Hope you have a great week ahead.